bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place.
Ready?
This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go. Go.
And a good Monday morning, Eagles fans. Appreciate you streaming on in here to Birds 365. You got your Mac and Mac guys. And yes, I will explain the look of one of the two Mac and Mac guys here in just a second. But thank you very much for tuning in. The playoffs have finally arrived. Got underway this weekend, and the Eagles now know who they'll be facing next Saturday night. That would be Big Blue, the New York Giants. John McMullen and Jody McDonald here to talk about it all week long leading up to the big game on Saturday night versus Big Blue. And yes, yours truly is a little Big Blue today. Actually, it's a little more purple than blue. Do not adjust your computer screens or TV, however you're taking in Birds 365 this morning. I missed the show last week. I was out Thursday. I had to have surgery done. Removal of some skin cancer on the top of my noggin. And I was here Friday. The swelling of my face did not begin until Friday afternoon. And it just continued over the course of the weekend. So much like the Philadelphia Eagles, I'm here to play through pain. It's the playoffs. You don't take downtime during the playoffs.
Can't
you
take
play
off,
through
baby.
injury.
Lane Johnson playing through injury. We appreciate it, Jody. But yeah, you look like the mighty Giants beating up on that great Vikings defense.
Oh my God.
And me getting beat up on Twitter. By the way, for the people on Twitter, yeah, I've heard it's hard to beat a team 3 times. You don't have to tell me that again. It's such a trope. I'm so tired of it. This is the best case scenario.
Are people still beating that into the ground despite the fact that it's just not factual?
Yeah, not factual. It's like a psyop, Jody. It's been told to people so many times, they buy into it. And by the way, if you want to look at it this way, they haven't even played each other twice because the Giants didn't play anybody in game 2. It's the most absurd narrative there's out there. So I've heard it. I don't need to hear it again. Believe me, it's one of the oldest tropes in the NFL. As Jody points out, it's not even factual. Home teams who've done it are like 12-6. And that's, remember, it's always in the playoffs. So it's generally good team against good team. So that 667 winning percentage is even more amplified because of that. It never happens where you play a bad team 3 times. So it's an old trope. Nobody stops talking about it. I said it last week. Best case scenario, first round, New York Giants for the Eagles. They've owned this team for years. Now it's different. Brian Daboll's done a tremendous job. He deserves all the credit. I think he's coach of the year. Sorry, Nick. You know how much I like you, but I think he's done the most with the least. But yeah, I mean, that Minnesota defense, it's not the worst. I think Detroit was the worst. I think they beat them by about 16 yards, but at least Detroit had Aiden Hutchinson. That's the worst defense in football. And Eagles fans got to see, because they play the same scheme as the Eagles, same scheme. They got to see the difference of playing it well versus playing it poorly. And I hope they watch that game because that didn't look like the Eagles defense.
Not even close.
Yeah. And the back seven of the Eagles, a tad bit better than the back seven New York saw in Minnesota.
And, oh, by the way, the potential 3-game sweep in any given season with the 49ers win over the Seahawks this week, it is now, if the home team is hosting that third game and looking to go 3-0, 13-6. So it's even better than 16-7 because San Francisco already did it this year.
I forgot they did it. So yes, 13-6. Let's knock it up another, and we'll knock it up another number on Saturday night. What I'm most upset about is, of course, it's Saturday night, Jody. 8:15 game, but it is.
You wanted the earlier game?
Yes,
because you knew it was going to be Saturday. As soon as the Giants won, you knew it was going to be Eagle Giants. Tampa and the Cowboys play tonight. They weren't going to make them play on a short week. That game was
absolutely.
You knew it was going to be the winner of that game was going to be playing on Sunday, which meant the other two teams had to play on Saturday night or on Saturday. Could have been afternoon or night. Eagles are prime time. New York versus Philadelphia. Market size. There was no question in my mind that if the Eagles were playing on Saturday, it was going to be the Saturday night game, much to the chagrin of my partner.
Yeah, I kind of knew it too. But when you see it, when it comes out, it hurts. And, you know, the Chiefs are the early game. So you start, I mean, market size is understandable, no question about it. But the NFL has sort of overcome market size. So the marquee teams, Kansas City being one of them, I mean, they're going to get big ratings no matter what. But yeah, the odds were the Eagles. The odds were always the Eagles were going to play on Saturday night because they're the number one seed. They're a very popular team. And as you mentioned, they're not going to screw over the Monday night team and make them play, screw them out of another day when the team's had a bye week. So it was always pretty clear that's the way it was going to be. But yeah, kind of a punch in the face. Probably a bad thing to say today, but punch in the face for me.
Thanks for that, John. Yeah,
8:15 for me and me alone. It's
which I actually wasn't punched in the face. I'm blaming it on the wife. I'm saying there was some violence in the house, but that's not the case. My wife's taking pretty damn good care of me. As a matter of fact, I better choose my words very carefully here. Yeah, it does look like I've taken a beating this weekend, but I haven't much like the Eagles. Just sat back and enjoyed the football. And Johnny Mac, I got to tell you, on my CBS show over the weekend, the Grassy Knoll crew is out. The conspiracy theorists. Oh, the referees, these games are fixed. Why do they favor the home teams? And, you know, I liked all the home teams. I thought the home teams could go 6-0. They only went 4-1 with the Giants beating the Vikings, the only game. But you had an upset in there with Doug Pederson. I guess they're out to the refs and the league are out to screw the Chargers. Not the fact that the Chargers have been chokers their entire existence in the National Football League and choked it away again. Oh, no, this is all one big setup to get what the NFL wants for TV ratings. And it was funny because the guy actually called and asked and said, why would the NFL dictate a team be up 27-0? Don't they know that people tuned out of that game? I said, you really believe that the NFL is the WWE, that it's pre-scripted, that they already have
the NFL
dictates?
Yeah.
I got calls like that both days this weekend. It just boggles my mind that people can't handle the truth, as some famous actor once said in the movie, that it is competitive and each team is taking a shot at getting to a Super Bowl. And even though they were very different games this weekend, and we got one more left to go tonight, they were all pretty damn exciting. The only team that really won the way they were supposed to win was San Francisco, which, Johnny Mac, I hope you're going to give Brock Purdy a little bit more credit here.
Yeah, that's going to be not as much as most people. I'll say that. But I'll get to Brock Purdy. He did not play well in the first half. San Francisco did not. And then, obviously, they came on in the second half. And he deserves a ton of credit. Here's what I'll say about Brock Purdy. He's better than Jimmy Garoppolo ever was. So while people point to, and it's all right with Kyle Shanahan and the best play schemer in the NFL, or if he's not, he's second to Andy Reid. The playmakers are unbelievable. The Debo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey is one of the greatest in-season pickups in NFL history. He is such a good player when he's healthy, and he's been healthy. And Jimmy Garoppolo, he didn't have Christian, but you get the point. They made him run to the Super Bowl. I picked the 49ers to go to the Super Bowl because my assumption was Trey Lance would be a little bit better than Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's all you need to be with that team.
Mm-hmm.
He got hurt, and he wasn't playing that well anyway. So it went in a different direction. Brock Purdy has been the one who's been a little bit better than Jimmy Garoppolo. So as a 7th-round pick, he deserves all the credit in the world for playing at that level. You saw Skylar Thompson. I don't know how Miami was in that game, by the way, but Josh Allen turnovers, too many mistakes for Buffalo. Mike McDaniel, by the way, we got to talk about that guy. What a disaster. I mean, get the play in for the 3rd-string quarterback. They had to burn timeout after timeout after timeout. They were out of timeouts, and then he does it again, and they get a delay game. That was a disastrous performance that, again, points CEO coach, owners out there looking for coaches, CEO coach, don't get bogged down with play callers for the 700th time.
Except you like Kyle Shanahan.
I do like Kyle Shanahan, and I'm
but
not saying
should he become an offensive coordinator because he's so good at scheming and calling plays? Can't be a coach and a
no.
What would you do with Kyle Shanahan?
And by the way, Kyle Shanahan has had a numerous game management issues over the years. So has Andy Reid, by the way. What they should do is what Nick Sirianni has done, and show enough confidence to build up the game plan during the week, which is what you do anyway, and have enough confidence to delegate it so that your guy is going to call what you want in that situation. That's what that big play sheet is for. It's right there. Now you got to have a feel for it. And if you want to call something at a certain time, all you got to do is flip it over the communication channel and say, hey, let's run this. You could still do it. You could still do it at certain points of the game, but I think it's evident, especially evident with young coaches. And Andy's first ballot Hall of Famer. And I think everybody in Philadelphia, the first thing will say, time management, time. And guess what? At times they're right because he got bogged down with play calling. And Andy's given up play calling at times over the years, and he's gotten closer to it. But I advocate to all NFL owners. That's just my little soapbox. And Mike McDaniel was a perfect example of it. But getting back to Brock Purdy, your original question, I'm getting too wordy. He deserves all the credit in the world, but I'm not scared of him. I'm sorry. I'm not scared. If I'm the Philadelphia Eagles, bring it on. Bring it on. The shoe's coming. That these teams aren't good enough to take advantage of it. He had 4 overthrows. There were a couple times where there should have been interceptions. Seattle didn't take advantage of it. All you got to do is take advantage of it.
Johnny Mac, I've been doing this for a while, and I remember this conversation the last time I had it on the air in 1999 when people continued to say, yeah, but he's Kurt Warner. I'm not afraid of him. Bring on Kurt Warner. He was in the Arena League. He was playing in NFL Europe. Kurt Warner can't keep doing this. Kurt Warner can't continue.
I was probably one of those people. How'd
that season play out for Kurt Warner?
Hey, I do not see, and I'm telling you right here, Jody, I was probably one of those people. I don't remember, but I certainly didn't believe in Kurt Warner. But after and now it's hindsight, obviously. Kurt Warner had tremendous arm talent. I didn't know it at the time. I don't think anybody knew it. I don't think Dick Vermeil knew it. That's not what I see here. I mean, this is Deebo Samuel running wide open for a 7-yard reception and then going 70 on top of it. Kurt Warner's throwing the football down the field on a dime to Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt. There is a big, big difference. And I freely admit, as I said, I will raise my hand. In 1999, I probably said the same thing. I didn't believe in Kurt Warner because I knew nothing about Kurt Warner. And I didn't know that much about Brock Purdy. But I watched him. And again, 7 yards and Deebo taking it 70 is not the same of throwing it like a dime down the field on the greatest show on turf.
Understood, but I'll guarantee you, and you and I didn't know each other in 1999. You weren't evaluating, go, wow, Kurt Warner's got arm talent after 4 games, after 8 games, after 12 games. It was Kurt Warner at some point, the cookie's got to crumble. This got to stop.
Oh, yeah.
And it never
freely
did.
admit
So
that.
you don't recognize the arm talent after just however many games. You didn't on Kurt Warner, and maybe you won't do that for Brock Purdy either. The guy just keeps winning games. He's now 7-0, and they're averaging 35 points a game in the games that he's starting, which is off the charts good. Nobody else is doing that in the National Football League. I am legitimately scared. Eagles are going to beat the Giants this week. I think it could be competitive. I think Daboll has done a phenomenal job. I think Daniel Jones is an improving quarterback under a legitimate offensive head coach, which he hasn't had his time here in New York. So I don't think the Eagles are just going to throw up, roll their helmets out on the field and crush the Giants by 4 touchdowns. But I do think over the course of 60 minutes, the better football team is going to win, and the Philadelphia Eagles are the better football team. But I'm legitimately scared by Brock Purdy for the NFC Championship.
Well, I'm legitimately scared of the 49ers because the 49ers have the best team in football. I hate to say that, but I've been on that bandwagon through the preseason. They are tough. They are physical. They have the best offensive scheme. They have the best defense. They are really good from top to bottom. I'm worried about that part of it. I'm not worried about the mechanism that Kyle Shanahan is holding his hand. I'm not worried about that. That's a break. That's a break. Maybe it's not a break. Maybe that's wrong because Jimmy stinks. Jimmy Garoppolo. He's better than Jimmy Garoppolo. So they're even a little bit more dangerous. But to use your example, if Kurt Warner was there, yeah, then I'd be like, I didn't even care if they're coming on the road. You're in trouble. I don't get that feeling. I don't get that feeling. And maybe I'm wrong, but I don't get that feeling.
You're not wrong, but you're doing revisionist history.
I'm doing hindsight. I saw Kurt Warner. I freely admit that.
I understand, but you're either you're not picking up on my point or I'm not making it well. I'm not talking about Kurt Warner, the finished product. We now know Kurt Warner. We know the career he had. He's got a gold jacket. We know all of that, and you look at Kurt Warner in that way. I'm talking about Kurt Warner as he's doing what he was doing in 1999. And I'm not saying I'm predicting Brock Purdy is going to the Hall of Fame. All I'm saying is there are a lot of people out there, and I probably spend too much time on social media. Brock Purdy's not going to be able to do this to the Eagles. Brock Purdy's not coming into Lincoln Financial Field. At some point, the Brock Purdy is going to crash and burn. Be careful what you ask for, because all this guy has done is win. And it's not 2 games now. It's not 4. It's not 6. It's 7 games that he's gone undefeated and put up an average of 35 points in that very good, very talented San Francisco offense that Kyle Shanahan runs to perfection. So if you're clinging to this Brock Purdy, at some point the cookie must crumble. I don't know if it's going to, John.
Well, I would say it's on the road. It's not going to be at home. And I would say this: the Eagles. I don't want to go past the Giants, but I'm like you. They're going to.
Yeah, come on, let's go right past the Giants. They're going to beat the Giants. They're going to beat the Giants. To the end of the 49ers.
Let's be honest. They're going to beat the Giants, and the 49ers are going to beat Dallas or the Bucs. And that's probably where we're going to be a week from now. We're going to amp it up, and we're going to talk about it. And I will say, the Eagles better tackle on that day, because that's the concern. That's the concern, because it's going to be the underneath stuff. It's going to be Debo, Brandon Ayuk, go make plays in the open field, Christian McCaffrey as well. And guess what? George Kittle as well. I mean, those guys can make plays. Those guys can make plays. So if they have a tackling game like they had against Detroit in week 1, they're in trouble. That to me is going to be the most important part of that game. All right, give up the reception, but you better tackle. You better tackle well in that game. That to me is going to be the key.
That's an on-point, astute observation. But the Eagles have been a much better tackling team.
They have. They've gotten much better.
Over the course of the season, you talk about a team that's improved, and that's what you want to do. Anytime you're putting a team together, you start at a certain point. You just want to get better over the course of the season. And I don't know that I would even say that about the Eagles because of the Jalen Hurts injury. It's so tough to evaluate, but they certainly didn't finish up as strong as they had other sections of the season. but I think their tackling has just gotten better basically all year long. So if that's going to be the difference maker against San Francisco, that could be a good thing, because I actually think the Eagles have become one of the better tackling teams in the entire National Football League. All right, he's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We are the Mac and Mac guys. Get ready for it. Eagles-Giants coming up on Saturday. We'll be here the next 5 days to highlight it for you, break it down for you, give you insight on it, and we will tap into our many good guests that we've gotten over the years. Returning to the team a little bit. Well, all right, I can tell he's in the waiting room. He looks better than I do, and that's not saying much on a regular day. But on this day, it's saying absolutely nothing. But he also a little under the weather. Good to get him back in the mix. Ed, non-COVID Kracz is going to join us next here on Birds 365.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Val Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
Since 1977, it's always been about you, the community, at Rafferty Subaru. And through the Subaru Love Promise, we prove we care by supporting charities like So Good Now.
So Good Now helps kids in under-resourced areas by connecting them with student athletes to serve as mentors. We remove barriers so athletes can help youth in the corners of our communities where light and love are needed most.
When you choose Rafferty Subaru, you help organizations like So Good Now.
It's all about you at Rafferty Subaru.
Go for the beers, go for the cheers, go for the hit and the hits, go for the scene, go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Post-game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post-game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
It's divisional weekend Monday. Not the weekend coming on with the wild card. So now we look ahead to the next round of the playoffs. The first round of the playoffs for the Eagles. And we know the opponent. It's Big Blue, New York Giants, here to give us some insight on where the Eagles sit right now. Is one of the best in the business. He does it for SI with Johnny Mac. Our buddy Ed Kracz jumps aboard here on Birds 365. EK, how you feeling?
Getting there, Jody. Getting there. Slow and steady, baby.
Yeah, this is a big test spread. Getting up early. And you look good, buddy.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Yeah,
that makes two of you. So you're not going to get any sympathy from me, Kracz.
All right.
But
I don't know if you've heard this, Ed, but it's hard to beat a team 3 times in the playoffs. The Eagles will have to do that in the divisional round against the mighty New York Giants. Is it even possible to do something like that? Because I've heard on social media, it's really, really, really difficult.
Well, it's the first time I think the Eagles are playing a team that they have already beaten twice in their history.
Yes.
If I'm reading that correctly, I think I've seen that from a couple different outlets. So that's a first if they can do it. I think it's hard to beat a team twice in the same year, and the Eagles have struggled to do that. When they played Washington a second time and Dallas a second time, and now here they are with New York a third time, and that second one really doesn't count because the Giants didn't play anybody.
Exactly.
So I think that familiarity does make it a little more difficult. I don't know if it has to do with playing the same team 2 or 3 times, but I just think playing this Giants team, and if it would have been Dallas, and it still might be Dallas 2 weeks down the line, just that familiarity because they're in the same division and they play each other twice every single year is what could make this a pretty very good test for the Eagles.
And a lot of these stats and trends are based on history, and the further you get away from the date that you're on, the less water it holds. They beat them twice this year. You're right. Only, and the second game didn't really mean a lot because the Giants were playing second and or third team players in some spots. So you could pretty much throw that one out. They beat the snot out of the Giants 6 weeks ago in their house by more than 3 touchdowns. How did the Giants overcome something like that?
Well, I think that game is water under the bridge at this point. You could say it's only 6 weeks ago, but these are 2 different teams now. Jalen Hurts was healthy in that game. He's not going to be healthy. Lane Johnson was healthy. He's not going to be healthy. And the Giants are playing with a lot of confidence, especially after going into Minnesota and playing a really, really good game. I was really surprised at how well they played, to be honest. They came out cooking and didn't let Minnesota really get back into it. I mean, I know the Vikings tied it and everything, and then the Giants took the lead. But I just think they're 2 different teams at this point. I know it was just last month that they played, and the Eagles tattooed them 48-22. They scored on their first 3 possessions, touchdowns. But the Eagles haven't been that same team since then, and now they're a little banged up, and that's cause for concern.
Yeah, and that's the biggest concern, obviously. I think, it's really, and we know Lane Johnson's going to play, but we have to see how effective he can be playing through that core muscle tear, which is in his groin, the adductor.
Yeah.
Get it right for Dr. Jess. But Jalen Hurts, to me, is the biggest issue, and not he's going to play as well, but to me, are the Eagles going to limit him because they're concerned about the shoulder injury? Very similar to the Week 18 game against the Giants, where I think a lot of people said, well, the Eagles went vanilla because they might play the Giants, and a lot of people argued they probably would play the Giants, and it turned out to be that correct. But I don't think it was a vanilla. They just took the zone read out of the offense, and they took the zone read out of the offense because they wanted to protect the quarterback. If they have to continue in that vein, then I think things get much muddier offensively for the Eagles. I don't think it has anything to do with other than taking the biggest threat of the offense out of the offense. Is that a concern for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're taking out really but probably half of Jalen Hurts' game, and that's the zone read, the ability to beat another team with his legs. And we didn't see the Eagles do any of that inside the red zone. And it could be a game plan where, hey, we're not going to just, not run the zone read, but we're going to pick our spots to do it. And maybe those spots are inside the red zone where they might take kind of the wraps off of him. And I guess it's just going to be a pain tolerance thing with Jalen. I mean, there's no more tomorrows, right? I mean, you almost have to go in with a game plan with no restrictions, because if you lose, you're not going to play the next day, obviously.
Yeah.
And if you win and your quarterback's a little banged up, then you cross that bridge at that time. So, if it was me, I would probably just go in with no restrictions in the game plan. But the Eagles might decide that, hey, we're going to pick our spots to do the zone read to protect them a little bit, but, maybe take the wraps off at times when they really feel like they need to. Because to me, this offense can't operate without Jalen Hurts' legs being a part of it.
Ed, when will we know? And we won't know till after the game when we get to actually ask the participants, Jalen Hurts, Shane Steichen, and Nick Sirianni. But when will we have a pretty firm grasp in our own mind as to how much restrictions are put on Jalen Hurts? Is there a juncture? Is there a type of play call? Is there anything that in the first quarter we could see and say, all right, there are no restrictions? Or we say, uh-oh, they're calling it the same way they did when these two teams played 2 weeks ago. Is there any telltale sign that you think you'll be able to pick up on?
Yeah, that's a good question. It could be like I watched some of this Rocky marathon while I've been quarantining here at home. And, when they came out, he was a left-handed fighter. And then they switched up to being a righty like halfway through the fight to kind of throw off Apollo. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see the Eagles maybe do that, kind of play it a little vanilla. And then at some point, like in the second quarter or whatever, okay, let's start using the zone read. Let's throw them off balance a little bit. I'd kind of like to see that approach, but I don't know if there'll be a telltale sign. I mean, if they start doing it in the first quarter, then I don't think they're going to stop doing it in the second and third quarter unless Jalen Hurts' shoulder is really killing him. But I would kind of like to see that and say, we're going to come out, we're going to do our thing without Jalen being too much involved, and then bam, switch up mid-game and start hitting him with the legs of Hurts.
All right. Typically, I crap on the Giants a little bit because I don't think they're a very good team from a playoff perspective. I think Brian Daboll's done a tremendous job. Obviously, they're a good team. I just don't think they're, at the level of the top tier playoff teams like the Eagles and San Francisco. But I give Wink Martindale a lot of credit in that game yesterday because we all know Wink's reputation. Blitz, blitz, blitz. He's going to blitz from the buses. He didn't blitz much because he was savvy enough to know he could get home with 4. Bad offensive line that was missing 2 starters on top of it. Needed to bracket Justin Jefferson. You can't just give him go balls with that blitz. So he changed and went away from his typical modus operandi. Does that go back to blitzing from the buses because of Jalen Hurts' shoulder on Saturday night?
Yeah, I think if Lane Johnson, and then my concern with Lane is we've seen games where he's tried to play through some things and he can't quite do it, and he's taken out after 5, 6 snaps or 10 snaps, and kind of ruining the continuity there. That's kind of my concern. Is he'll start, but I don't know if he'll finish because of that adductor tear. But with the Eagles' offensive line being still one of the best in the NFL, I mean, I think Wink's going to have to probably blitz like he always seems to do against the Eagles. I mean, it always seems like they bring an extra rusher against Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts. Then the Eagles leave in the block. And the Eagles are going to have to account for that because I don't think Martindale's going to try to get home with his 4 guys. I think he's going to have to blitz to put pressure on Hurts. He always does it. So I don't see him having that same game plan. I mean, the Vikings' offensive line was in disarray, had some injuries. But the Eagles, even without Lane, if he were to kind of limp off, they're still pretty good. But the Eagles are going to have to figure that out because Jalen Hurts did a lot of running, a lot of scrambling, a lot of, didn't really have time to scan the field too much in that meeting, even in round 2 when they played their backups. So, the Eagles are going to have to be ready for the blitz, and they're going to have to figure it out because I think Wink Martindale is going to do it.
The Giants did put up 31 points yesterday against a Viking defense that's not very good. But Daniel Jones threw for 300 yards. That's not bad in the playoffs. When you're throwing for 300 yards against any other playoff team, that's pretty good. And they're nameless, faceless, Isaiah Hodgins and Richie. They're wide receivers. Nobody knows, but they are making plays. Will the Eagles defense give enough respect to the Giants offense that has improved over the course of the year?
Yeah, Daniel Jones played a really good game. I mean, not only throwing for those 301 yards, he ran for 78. He ran, I think it was a career high 17 times in the game. So
17 times. I've heard that number before. What are they trying to get him killed at, Kracz?
Yeah, a lot of those times the field was just wide open. So
yeah, exactly.
That's another thing. As much as the offense has to prepare for the Martindale blitz, they still have, on the defensive side, they're going to have to keep somebody in with an eye on Jones. I think they might need a spy. They might need a Kaiser or White to keep an eye on him to kind of make sure he doesn't kill him in the run game, because that's where he made a lot of his plays. And then when he started doing that, that really opened up the passing game. So they're going to have to restrict Jones. And I know, I think in that first meeting, the Eagles sacked Jones, and then Tyrod Taylor came in and they sacked him 7 times. Brandon Graham had 3 sacks in that first meeting that the Eagles beat on them. So there's no reason they can't do that again. I mean, I think this Giants offensive line is pretty good, but it's not great. I think the Eagles can get to Jones, but they have to make sure Jones doesn't get to them, and they have to make sure he doesn't take off running, when he sees an open lane. They're going to have to make sure they understand where he is at all times. And if that means putting a spy on him and, taking somebody out of, the downfield scheme, then so be it.
Yeah, that and I would say this about Daniel Jones, because I think he's played very well this year. I think Brian Daboll, Mike Kafka have been tremendous for him. I think the most impressive part is he doesn't turn the football over anymore. He used to be a turnover machine under other coaches who didn't stress it as much. He's always had that athleticism. You remember the big run at Lincoln Financial Field where he tripped over himself. But, we go back to that trope. It's hard to beat a team 3 times. I look at it from the other perspective. The Eagles know what Daniel Jones can do as a runner. They're more cognizant of it because they're used to playing the Giants, whereas they tend to surprise some other teams when he shows up and he's more athletic and better than people think. So in some ways, I think the familiarity part of it might help the Eagles even more.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, and you're right about him not turning the ball over. And listen, this is a franchise on the rise. There's no doubt with Brian Daboll in charge now, and if Mike Kafka returns, I mean, I would think yesterday would help Mike Kafka's chances possibly for becoming a head coach in this league. Very good offensive coordinator, but this is a team on the rise. If they get Jones some weapons that aren't named Richie James and Isaiah Hodgins, and they get him. I know Daniel Bellinger is a pretty decent tight end, but they're going to be a dangerous team, and I think they already are dangerous. But you're right, John. That familiarity could help the Eagles when it comes to Jones. I mean, they've seen this guy now at least one game this year, but they've played him several times over the past few years. So they should be familiar with him and how he can beat you with his legs. And Gannon can't let that happen. He's got to make sure he beats him in the pass game, that he doesn't pick up 78 yards on the ground like he did against the Vikings.
All right. I said this last week here on the show, even before we knew who the Eagles were going to be playing, that a potential breakout guy in the Eagles' first playoff game this year could be their tight end, Dallas Goedert. I watched TJ Hawkinson just rip the Giants to shreds yesterday. 10 receptions for 129 yards. They actually did a good job of keeping Justin Jefferson under wraps, but they had no answer for TJ Hawkinson. How big a game could Goedert have against the Giants this week?
Yeah, he missed that first game against the Giants. He wasn't available. But again, familiarity, the Giants know who Dallas Goedert is, but do they have anybody that can cover him? And you're right, seeing what Hawkinson did against the Giants defense, Dallas Goedert could be really, he could be a real thorn in the Giants' side if the Eagles choose to throw him the ball. But we all know really A.J. Smith and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, I kind of combine their names because they're really one and the same. They're 2 very dangerous receivers, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. I mean, those are the guys I think the Eagles are going to try to get the ball to also. But remember, too, in that first game against the Giants, the Eagles ran for like 250-plus yards. I thought the Vikings probably should have tried to run the ball a little bit more. I mean, I know they fell behind early, but they were never really out of it to get away from the running game. So I think the Eagles can do some damage there in the run game. But really, we've seen how this Eagles team has lost in the past and it's turning the ball over and losing the time of possession. So the Eagles really, first and foremost, have to make sure they don't have any turnovers or limit the turnovers. They can't turn it over 4 times like they did in 2 of their 3 losses, and they have to be able to get off the field on third down. The Giants had that ball for that long drive that led to a field goal, like almost 11 minutes.
Yeah, 19 plays.
Yeah,
for those who hate the Vic Fangio scheme, you see the good version. You don't see the bad version. You got to see the bad version with Minnesota and the Chargers. So I hope people were watching those 2 games. Well, you had the good and the bad in the Chargers game because they were darn good early, but they kind of fell apart.
Yeah, but you can't have the Giants offense converting third downs, fourth downs, and holding the ball for 10 minutes on a drive. I mean, you have to get off the field if you're the Eagles defense, and that's been kind of how you beat this team, is control the ball and force turnovers. So that's where it has to start. Dallas Goedert, obviously a really huge piece to get going against this team that had trouble guarding TJ Hawkinson, but it has to start with no turnovers and getting off the field on third down.
All right, let's stem some of the angst some of the fan base is going to have after watching the Giants play so impressively against Minnesota. I know you're breaking down this game from a personnel perspective. The Eagles, I would argue the Eagles are better everywhere except running back. And that's not an insult to Miles Sanders. That's just Saquon Barkley's a really, really talented player. You see him in the passing game, obviously as a running back, just really, really talented. Everywhere else, even special teams, I would call it wash. The Eagles aren't good at special teams, but either are the Giants. Everywhere else, the Eagles are better. Am I wrong?
Well, yeah, I listen, slightly at running back. I mean, the Eagles have more of a committee type of situation. I know Miles Sanders, obviously their lead back, 1,200 plus yards rushing, 11 touchdowns, comparable numbers actually to what Barkley did this season in terms of yards on the ground and touchdowns. But Barkley's a much bigger threat out of the backfield. But the Eagles combat that with Kenny Gainwell, who, he's having a pretty good end of the season here. I think he's got a reception in 7 straight games. I think he's caught 14 passes for 119 yards over these last 7 games. So he's becoming, we saw him struggle in training camp. We saw him struggle at the start of the year, but he seems like he's playing better now. So he's kind of that threat out of the backfield. And then, of course, Boston Scott, you have to factor him in.
Yeah,
this as well. I mean,
that prop bet in early, by the way, people get it in. Boston Scott touchdown.
Yeah, and the Eagles know it too, and they play to it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets some touches down inside the red zone to try to get him that touchdown. I'd even like to see them use him on a wheel route coming out of the backfield and see if they can get him the ball in the passing game. But yeah, I think you have to factor that in when you're looking at who you're going to give the edge here to, as the Eagles are more of a committee approach and they have Boston Scott. But I think you're right. I think the Giants probably would have a slight edge at running back just because Saquon is so darn good. And then I also gave him the edge at safety. I think Julian Love and Xavier McKinney are
that's
good.
The other part you can argue. They're good players, but
yeah, they're good. And Chauncey Gardner, is he going to be a slot? I mean, we don't know what Maddox's situation is in terms of returning. I don't think. I know they made a couple IR moves going into last week's game. I don't think he was one of them, unless I'm wrong about.
No, Avante. No. Avante's still on the roster.
Yeah,
but yeah, still uncertain.
So yeah, if he can return, that would certainly help, and then you can just put CJ back at his safety rather than kind of bouncing in between, slot and safety. So I just give the edge a little bit at safety to the Giants. Julian Love led the team in tackles, had a couple interceptions. Xavier McKinney missed a lot of time with an injury. I think he only played 9 games, but it's a very good duo that they have at safety. So I'd give a slight edge to the Giants there. And the defensive line, even, I know the Eagles have greater depth on the interior, but Dexter Lawrence is, he's tremendous.
Great player. But the Eagles are so deep on the defense. I mean, they're deeper.
You have to go with the depth there. The Eagles can run Joseph and Sue and Davis out there, and the Giants don't have that depth, but the guys they play with Leonard Williams, who really played, I thought, pretty solid yesterday against the Vikings. Those two are very good, Lawrence and Williams. So, they're close in the defensive line, but again, I give the Eagles probably the edge there as well.
Just got a text from Miles Sanders. He says, challenge accepted, McMullen. Just make sure John knows that I only outrushed Saquon Barkley 144.
And by the way,
28.
Miles will take that challenge because obviously they're good friends from their Penn State days, and he always gets fired up when he's playing Saquon. And he might have more yards, but I'm going to be honest, Saquon's a better player, but that doesn't mean he's going to get.
Oh, and he said the only thing that matters is Saturday's game, not what anybody has done in previous seasons. So Miles sticking up for himself. But what he didn't send me in the text is how his knee feels. Again, the Eagles run their business the way they run their business. And we all understand it. They take it sometimes to ludicrous ends on keeping information tight and trying to gain a competitive advantage. Will you guys be able to get any clue as to Miles Sanders and whether he is? We all talk about Jalen Hurts and what percent he's at, and none of us know, but we judge both before and after the fact and try and come up with a number. Will you have any clue what Miles is at before the game starts? Because he's been wearing that knee brace, hasn't been as effective the last couple of weeks. You got to go back to that unbelievable 140-yard game against the Giants to see Miles at 100%. How will we know what Miles is coming into the game on Saturday?
Well, I think that knee brace, it's great for offensive and defensive linemen to wear a knee brace, but I'm not so sure it's good for a running back who makes his living on, cutting back with the football and making sharp turns on the field. So that's got to be a problem. And the Eagles will have two open practices this week, very limited amount of viewing time, but we'll get to see, if Miles is wearing that brace during practice, because to me, I think that makes all the difference in the world. If he has to wear that brace, that to me is, restrictive, doesn't favor him at all, and probably won't lead to 100+ yards rushing. So they'll have to get Scott and Kenny Gainwell a little bit more involved, in my opinion. And, we'll ask Miles, hey, how you feeling? I feel great. He won't admit to anything. So we're not going to get any answers from him. Maybe he'll text you, Jody, and
he's not texting me. I got in trouble.
He texted me, but he just did some bragging. He didn't give me any updated health information, which I'm ticked off about. Thanks a lot, Miles.
I got in trouble, as Ed knows, for noticing the knee brace. I'm going to say burst. I got in trouble for that. So, but he did ditch it in week 18. So unless he had a relapse, I'm going to assume he's not going to play with it. And that'll help because you're right. He was not the same when he was wearing that thing. So another injury thing to keep an eye on. I want to talk about the games as a whole. And I don't know how closely you guys watched. The NFL kind of went full sky judge this week, and I loved it. They were fixing stuff. They hate that term, and I don't know why, but they were fixing bad calls in real time and not going to the replay and just saying, hey, we're talking to the officials on the field, correcting stuff. I liked it. Did you guys notice that? And did you like it?
Yeah, I think I noticed it a couple of times. I can't remember the specific play. I watched so much football, and I was in and out on some of the games, and some I stayed with longer. But, yeah, of course. Listen, let's not go to review every single time and take 5 to 10 minutes to try to figure out what went wrong or what went right. If we can solve it on the field, let's do it. And if we're going to start doing that, then let's open it up to, I think there was that roughing the passer penalty.
Well, that you can't change. That's the rule. I get people don't like that. But
if you have someone that's, buzzing down and saying, hey, that's a penalty, we need to call that, then throw the flag right then and there and call the penalty. If we're going to start doing that, where you have assistants on the field with who's ever watching, in real time the game, then let's open it up to, a couple different things that you're able to fix and correct if there's an egregious mistake. Because I like it. I think it's great. We've seen the college game, I think, do that, right? They kind of buzz down.
Well, the problem with college, they do it, but they buzz down and they look. So it takes so long. What I love about what the NFL is doing is they're saying, hey, you got that wrong. Just correct it. I love it. They should have been doing this for years.
Yeah, but do you really want guys making key calls watching a TV monitor?
Yeah, I do. I want
over
him to
a
get
guy
it
who's
right.
standing 4 feet away from the play.
Yeah, because the guy standing 4 feet away from the play gets it wrong too much. I
Yeah.
mean, it's easier in high definition to see. I mean, they picked some spots, some really bad spots,
Right.
and they moved it back, and they moved it forward, moved it back. I mean, I love it personally. I love it.
I think as long as you get it right, I mean, and they seem to get it right. I think one of the plays they kind of overturned right in real time was it was called a fumble. Tyler Huntley had the fumble there that they scooped up and they called it a fumble, but then it was ruled quickly that was a forward pass.
Yeah.
And they fixed that.
Was one
so
of them. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, John's right. We've seen officials standing 4 feet, like the Dallas Goedert face mask penalty against Washington that led to his injury. I mean, guys are standing right there.
Where were the officials? Where was the guy in the booth? How did he not come up with that one?
Well,
again,
because they're not
a review.
allowed on that type of play. Now, that's another conversation. But they weren't doing it. That's my point. They weren't doing it as much in the regular season. They were doing it all the time, trying to get crap right in the playoffs. I loved it.
So you think Roger Goodell sent out a memo to all his officials
I do.
this week
I
and
believe.
said,
I believe
we need to rely more on our replay guys in the booth, referees. That you should just listen to whatever they tell you and judge the game accordingly. You think that memo was sent out?
They changed. That's all I'm saying. They changed for the playoffs, and I thought it was a good change.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the officiating's been a sore spot all year with this league. So maybe Roger's like, okay, there's going to be more eyeballs on us. Let's make sure we're giving our officials every chance to at least get this thing right without leaving egg on their face. And maybe he did send out a memo. I would say he probably did, but I like it. And that Goddard face mask thing, I think that's outside the purview of what you can and can't do. But again, if you're going to be looking at things in the sky and an official says, hey, that you missed that face mask, Frank, or whoever's reffing the game, we got to throw a flag here, then you throw the flag, whether it's 2 seconds after the play or whenever it is. I mean, just to get something right. And I think there was a chance in that situation to correct the wrong. But right now you can't. That's a subjective call. You can't change that. But I'm thinking that if they're going to start doing this, then maybe there are some things penalty-wise that they can look at quickly in the sky and say, hey, we goofed, throw the flag. Maybe that's
with the roughing the passer stuff. Look, I'm with most fans that hate these calls, like Dexter Lawrence, the player talking. That's not roughing the passer to me, but to them it is. I mean, that's a problem with the legislation. They don't like the rule, which I get. It's not a problem with the call on the field. That's what they're told to do. And there was a push in the Miami Buffalo game. Same thing. It's a penalty. I mean, it sucks that it's a penalty, but it's a penalty. That's the legislation. So they hate the legislation, but the call was right on the field for what the officials are told to do. So that's why I think that part of it is a little bit different.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Eddie K. We know the Eagles host the Giants next Saturday night. Next Sunday, it will be San Francisco against TBD, and that's not Tom Brady. That's to be determined, because the Bucs and the Cowboys have yet to play. They'll get it on tonight down in Tampa. Who you got?
Tonight's game, I got. I kind of wish Sam Howell was playing. I'd like to see another.
We hadn't even got to Sam Howell. Sam Howell's biggest fan. He's been waiting to get out of here. COVID. Sam Howell went out, and I saw this weekend that the Commanders are on record that as of right now, Sam Howell is their QB1 for the offseason.
How about
they're looking at him as their starting quarterback going forward. And I say, that's great news, Eagle fans. If Sam Howell is the Commanders' starting quarterback going forward, you can pencil them in for behind the Eagles in the standings next year.
And I would say, I would add, Jody, it's January 16th. I think the Commanders have a chance to change their mind.
Change their mind between now and September.
All
right,
you might be right. Derek Carr's hanging out there, and they're going to get a new OC in Washington. So keep an eye on Derek Carr there. I'm not sure they're going to be so in love with Sam Howell as the offseason moves on. But getting back to your question, Jody, who do I like tonight? I think the Cowboys are going to win. I know Tom Brady's 7-0 all time against the Cowboys, and I just think Dallas is the better team roster-wise, and I think they'll find a way, and it'll be TBD will be replaced by the Cowboys, and they'll go to the 49ers next Sunday in the divisional round. I think it's going to be close. Brady's playing better. This team, the Tampa Bay team, seems to be getting healthier as we get later in the season here. So I just think Dallas is the better team. They may even have the better coach in this game. As hard as that is to believe, Mike McCarthy might be the better coach. Yeah, but I think Dallas finds a way to win this game.
Not a big
the Mike McCarthy disrespect. I think Dallas is the better team. I'm with you. Tampa Bay's getting a little bit better, but let's be honest, they're just playing for the right to go out and get bitch slapped by Brock Purdy anyway.
That's
so
probably correct, but they both want that right. You think Cowboys going to win tonight, McMullen?
I do. I do think the Cowboys are going to win tonight, and I think they're the better team. And I was concerned, when I rated the potential Eagles opponents, Dallas would, to me, in the divisional round, would have been the most difficult opponent because they have the most talent. Now, I still think the Eagles would have won the game, should win the game, should have won that game. But they are more talented than the other possibilities are. And to me, it comes down to personnel. And I don't think Mike McCarthy's nearly as bad a coach as most people do. I think he gets a bad rap, to be honest. But that's
we all agree he's got a good staff. But I just got another text from TB12 said, "Did you ask McMullen if he's watched my career?" Really? You think that he's going to get?
Well, I've been,
fourth quarter. Watch what happens. Brady within a touchdown.
Well, if you can get me through the first 58 minutes, and the Bucs have the ball with under 2 minutes to go and down 3, I probably agree with you. I'd probably pick the Bucs, but you do have to play 60 minutes. I think Dallas is going to handle their business in the first 55 or so.
Tom Brady will abuse the other corner, not named Quandre Diggs, in the fourth quarter and lift his team to a right. I get the Diggs is confused. Will lift them to a victory in the fourth quarter. I think Tampa's going to win tonight. So you guys got Dallas, I got Tampa, but you're right. All three of us agree. Good for you. Have a nice flight to San Francisco and then enjoy the rest of your off season after the game next Sunday. And neither one of these two teams could beat the 49ers in San Fran, can they?
Well, how do you guys feel about the Monday night game? I mean, to me, it seems anticlimactic playing a playoff game.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I don't like it at all. I wish, they had 3 games Saturday, 3 games Sunday.
I'll probably like it at 8:15 when I sit down and I'm like, oh, what's there to watch? Oh, yeah, there's a football game on, and then I'll put it on. But it feels anticlimactic to me after the weekend we just had, great games down to the wire, some of them. It just feels like, well, why couldn't we just throw that game on Saturday? Why couldn't we do 3 Saturday, 3 Sunday, and start talking about next week already?
Prime reason for it. Disney wrote a very big check to get a Monday night playoff game.
TV money rules the world.
That's why they're playing that game tonight rather than 3 on Saturday. Ed Kracz, it's good to see you. It's good to know you're on the improve. We appreciate you coming on board, and I promise not to punch you the next time I see you so you look like me.
Yeah. You made it through, Ed. Big test. You made it.
I can bob and weave like Sam Howell, baby. You
very good.
My footwork.
You tested it like Jalen's shoulder, and you made it through.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
You got it. That's Ed Kracz of SI. Yeah, he is the biggest Sam Howell fan in the Delaware Valley, and I pimp him because of that. But he gets his just rewards because Sal did play well in that final game. Stuck it to the Cowboys, who surprisingly both Kracz and McMullen think are going to win, despite the fact that Sam Howell lit him up last week when they were playing for a divisional possible championship. You don't think Brady's going to be able to do what Sam Howell did?
Yeah, you know how the NFL goes. When one of the problems with the Cowboys is their lack of consistency, and generally, they'll have a good game, then they'll have a bad game, then they'll bounce back. And they had a bad game. I don't think they'll have 2 really bad games in a row. That's part of the reason I'm picking them in this game, to be honest.
Yeah, I think they've got another bad game up their sleeve. And then, TV's going to get to go out. It's kind of be a little ironic if that's Brady's last game, which, oh, by the way, I don't think it is. I think he's going to play next year. Not in Tampa. I think he'll be somewhere else. But last game back out.
He hasn't got the wife to worry about anymore.
That's why I think he's coming back next year. I think he'll be elsewhere. I had a Tampa guest on last night, Casey Allen, who's been on with us here on Birds 365, and he said he thinks Brady's coming back to Tampa. I think he's coming back, but it won't be in Tampa. But that's
so. Who you got, real quick? Miami, Las Vegas, San Francisco. They wouldn't dare usurp Brock Purdy for Tom Brady.
Brock Purdy is locked in San Francisco. The other two are distinct possibilities. If Tua's career is sitting in the balance, then yeah, I think Miami is a pretty damn good shot because they wanted that to happen. And the other one that has been kicked around, which could play into an overall decision of someone who will be a big name all off season. Where's Sean Payton land? I thought that we would have had an announcement yesterday that the Chargers were firing Brandon Staley, with the fact that he's just been a bad coach, period. Then he puts Mike Williams out there in week 18 when he's got nothing to win, gets him hurt. He's out of the game, blows a 27-0 lead. I thought the hammer was coming down yesterday. It didn't. I don't know if that means he keeps his job, but if he does get fired, if we find out something today, that seems the most logical spot for me. But if Peyton lands there, Herbert's going to be their quarterback. But if he goes elsewhere, Peyton and Brady have a pretty good relationship. I wouldn't count that team out of the Brady potential landing spot group either.
Yeah, well, if you think about the potentials for Sean, it would be Chargers, Broncos, Arizona. Broncos can't move on from Russell Wilson. Arizona, they can't move on from Kyler Murray. So difficult spots, but yeah, Miami's an interesting one because of the reason you mentioned. In Las Vegas, because of Josh McDaniels. Lord knows Josh McDaniels needs some help. So, Tom, if you want to help out your buddy, maybe that makes some sense.
I'll give you a prediction right now. Circle it on the calendar. Jody Mack said this on Birds 365. The starting quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders next year will be an ex-Patriot, but his name is Jimmy Garoppolo, not Tom Brady.
Ooh, so the Raiders are going to continue to be bad. We can chalk that up.
I think Jimmy G is the ex-Patriot who comes in to play with McDaniels, not Brady. But we'll see. There's a whole bunch of things that can happen between now and then, including more playoff games, including the Eagle first playoff game. And that'll be against the Giants next Saturday. We'll continue to break it down for you here on Birds 365.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Valle Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
Since 1977, it's always been about you, the community, at Rafferty Subaru. And through the Subaru Love Promise, we prove we care by supporting charities like So Good Now.
So Good Now helps kids in under-resourced areas by connecting them with student athletes to serve as mentors. We remove barriers so athletes can help youth in the corners of our communities where light and love are needed most.
When you choose Rafferty Subaru, you help organizations like So Good Now.
It's all about you at Rafferty Subaru.
Go for the beers, go for the cheers, go for the hit and the hits, go for the scene, Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
Hour number 2 of this Monday playoff edition of Birds 365. You got Mac and Mac. It may look like Mac and Rocky Raccoon, but it is Mac and Mac here with you on Birds 365. For those of you who just streamed in. Oh, by the way, you go ahead and hit the like button since you're here, and we're getting prepped for our big Eagle playoff game next week. Last week, yours truly had to have some surgery done to get some skin cancer removed from my noggin. And the surgery was a success, so they tell me. Be glad that I'm wearing the hat because you don't want to see the sutures and staples in the top of my head. You think my eyes are ugly, you should see the top of my head. That will keep hidden. But surprisingly, I did not know this was going to happen. They didn't tell me this either, even though they said the procedure was a success. Somehow the trauma to the top of my head has made its way down onto my face, and it looks like, I went 4 rounds with Mike Tyson. Not good. But I'm a playoff player. What can I tell you? I'm a tough guy.
Boy.
This is postseason. There's no downtime. Suck it up, get it done. That's what we're trying to do here on Bridge 365.
Yeah.
So a couple people have said on the stream, what the hell happened to Jody? I had to repeat it the second time. Yeah, I know. I look like...
By the way, Jody, I might show up with some trauma tomorrow after watching that Giants-Vikings game. Can I give you 2 statistics from that game? Since I'm just popping that. This is amazing to me. How bad was the defense in that game? Daniel Jones, first quarterback in NFL postseason history with 300-plus passing yards, 2+ passing touchdowns, 70+ rushing yards. So that's one of those, you place the sort of yardstick where you want to go. But get this, for people who think the Giants played well, the Vikings are the only team in the Super Bowl era to complete at least 80% of their passes with no turnovers and no sacks allowed and lose the game. Teams had been 47-0 in the regular season and postseason before that game. When did the NFL turn into the Big 12, Jody?
Yeah, a whole lot of offense. I mentioned that on CBS last night when I was on. If you're looking for trends and givens through the first 4 games, the over was not in doubt in any of the games. In the 60s, they were scoring, and the numbers are usually in the 40s. If they get the 50, so be it. Everybody scoring in the 60s combined, and the Vikings and the Giants held that up as well. Yeah, I got one bad piece of information for you, though, J-Mac. And I know the point you made. Here's what you said last week. Kirk Cousins will be given Hall of Fame consideration.
No, I said if he won the Super Bowl.
Oh, okay. If he wins the Super Bowl,
which ain't going to happen. See, people forget that, Jody. I said people are going to have a difficult. What I said is people are going to have a difficult conversation if he ever gets on a run and wins a Super Bowl, because his numbers are so good. Not now, obviously.
That's good because it's never going to happen. Because Kirk Cousins again yesterday. John, I don't know that you and I have ever discussed this. I've discussed it way too many times in the air, on the air, and on my broadcast. There is nothing. I mean, the number one thing about professional football that annoys me is when a team on 4th down throws the ball short of the sticks. The person should be fired. He should be run out of the league. The coach, the receiver, the quarterback, all of them should just be booted out of the league. How do you not get to a first down when it is 4th down and you desperately, and it can't be more desperate, Giants get to go into victory formation thereafter the game is over. How do you not get to the sticks if you're the wide receiver, or in this case it was Hawkinson? How do you call a play with a pattern that's going to come up short of the sticks? And then most importantly, if you're the quarterback, how do you choose to throw it to someone who is 4 yards short of a first down and then watch him get tackled? How? When your name's Kirk Cousins and he comes up the smallest and the biggest spots in the history of the National Football League. Yeah, we don't even have to have your hypothetical conversation about if Kirk Cousins wins the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but I want to make that clear. I said if he won the Super Bowl because he's not a Hall of Fame player. So you know how social media people are, Jody. I said because of the numbers, it's going to be a difficult conversation. I tweeted the exact same thing in the moment. It drives me insane. Now, I get upset at college quarterbacks where the rules are different. And if you get a first down, they stop the clock. So if it's late in the game and you're a kid who doesn't have any experience and you don't get like 3 yards ain't going to help you if the clock is going to run. You got to throw the ball to the sticks and stop the clock. And it's better to have an incomplete pass or throw it away or whatever. I get upset at college quarterbacks who do it. If you've been playing as long as Kirk Cousins, if you've been playing as long and you're doing that with your season on the line, it's bad enough in week 8, right? It's bad enough in a week 8 game where you're going to play next week, but your entire season is on the line. And oh, by the way, you have Justin Jefferson, and he talked about this after the game. They won a game in Buffalo because he was smart enough on 4th and 19 to just throw the ball up to Justin Jefferson, who came up with it in one of the greatest catches of all time. Throw the stinking ball. Just throw it up. Throw it up to one of your good receivers. Yeah. And you're right about, I don't blame as much Kevin O'Connell. That's a Kirk Cousins thing. He's got to understand that every play sort of has an outlet, and that's what Hawkinson was on that particular play. Maybe you got to take it away from him if he's that dumb. Yeah. If he's that dumb in that spot. But I also said, you know, if I'm doing a Vikings autopsy, 1 through 19 is defense, all the way to 19, and then you get to 4th and 8. He played he played really well in that game until that play. He's not the reason they lost that game, but I'm with you 100%. That is an extremely dumb play for a veteran quarterback. Extremely dumb play.
You can't do it. And I've some very good quarterbacks, including Eagle quarterbacks who over the years I've maligned for doing the same exact thing. It's the dumbest play in football. You can't do it. And don't give me, if he breaks a tackle, he can make, no, it's dumb. You can't take that risk. The risk reward of throwing it short of the sticks and making a guy have to be able to break a tackle is just, I'm sorry. There's no way you can justify it. You couldn't justify it for Kirk Cousins yesterday. It was just flat out dumb. But the Giants benefited, which means they're coming here to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles next week. It's a fun matchup, and it'll have nothing to do with the voting, but I think the Brian Dable versus Nick Sirianni matchup is fun too, because the Eagles beat them twice already this year. And I would, if I had a vote, I'd give it to Sirianni over Dable for Coach of the Year, but it's close. I said this yesterday on CBS. If you agree with me, John. Sirianni, Dable, Doug Pederson, and or your boy out in San Francisco. If any of those 4, Kyle Shanahan being the 4th, if any of those 4 win Coach of the Year, I'm okay with it. I think that's close between those 4 guys. If you wanted me to put them in an order, I would go Shanahan 1, Sirianni 2, Dable 3, Pederson 4, but I'm okay with any of those 4. How about you?
Yeah, I wouldn't be upset. Unfortunately, my definition is kind of, and everything's I say all the time, everybody's about definition. So I go with who's done the most with the least, and that's why I picked Daboll. But Doug's really close. So to me, it's between those two. Maybe I'm trying to be objective by not picking Doug because I do like Doug personally. Sirianni, it's not fair. Shanahan, it's not fair. I picked the 49ers to go to the Super Bowl. For Sirianni, it's more as the season went on, and I became clear, wow, this team's really good. Not that they haven't done great jobs. They've both done great jobs, and I expect them to be in the NFC Championship game, Nick Sirianni and Kyle Shanahan. And everybody knows how much I like Kyle Shanahan, and they should know how much I like Nick Sirianni. But I think Brian Daboll did the most with the least. So to me, he's the coach of the year.
Yeah, I do look at it a little differently. And you're right. You have to do it as the season goes on. The 49ers right now are playing the best football in football, and they're doing so with their third-string quarterback. That puts Kyle Shanahan on the top of the mountain for me. But Dougie P's defense, did read this morning, did not know it. The first team ever in the history of the National Football League to have the worst record the season before, a.k.a. the number 1 draft pick, and then win a playoff game. Has never been done before in the history of the National Football League. He's getting quite
the resume for a guy who can't hire assistant coaches. I'm glad that narrative has died because he got kind of crapped on his way out of Philadelphia by some people. It was a minority, but by some people. And that was an absurd narrative. And I hope people are seeing it. Look, in a lot of ways, what he's done in Jacksonville is more impressive than the Super Bowl because the Eagles have a really good organization. I think they've proven that, and they have had for years. That has been a you-know-what show in Jacksonville for years and years. And coming off Urban Meyer, that team was dead, moribund, whatever adjective you want to use, and he turned them around, won a division title. Granted, bad division, but won a division title, and he's in the divisional round of the playoffs. Man, his resume is getting pretty stinking impressive.
What I described Jacksonville as prior to Dougie P showing up is dumpster fire. That's what the Jacksonville Jaguars were, and he came in and put out those flames. And, oh, by the way, now, if you look at the complete resume, 6 years NFL head coach, 4 times in the playoffs, including a Super Bowl win. That's pretty damn good. When you're 4 out of 6 at making the playoffs, and oh, by the way, you stepped into 2 not great situations, because let's be honest, when he took over the Eagles, there was an easy reason why they moved away from Andy Reid. The organization was
Chip Kelly. People forget. Moved away from Chip Kelly.
Moved away from Chip Kelly. Sorry. They were not good. That was not a great team that Doug was inheriting at that time. And we know how bad it was in Jacksonville. So to have made the playoffs 4 out of 6 years as an NFL head coach, that's pretty damn good accomplishment for Doug Pederson.
Yeah.
He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We see in the waiting room, it is our boy, Chris Franklin, our usual Monday contributor here on Birds 365 from NJ.com. CF, Chris Franklin next. Keep it here.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Valle Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
Since 1977, it's always been about you, the community, at Rafferty Subaru. And through the Subaru Love Promise, we prove we care by supporting charities like So Good Now.
So Good Now helps kids in under-resourced areas by connecting them with student athletes to serve as mentors. We remove barriers so athletes can help youth in the corners of our communities where light and love are needed most.
When you choose Rafferty Subaru, you help organizations like So Good Now.
It's all about you at Rafferty Subaru.
Go for the beers, go for the cheers, go for the hit and the hits, go for the scene, go for the screens, go for the gallery, go for the win, go to Ocean.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Post-game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post-game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
Appreciate you streaming in here with us on Birds 365 playoff week action. The Eagles will be in action on Saturday against the Giants in a divisional round. You've got Mac, Rocky Raccoon, and now Chris Franklin joining us. One quick note for guys on the stream. I got to give Dax a heads up. Holla. He wanted me to do a Yo Adrian because I'm resembling Rocky right about now at the end of the fight against one of the all-time great fighting scenes. No, just had some things I had to deal with for surgery and the repercussions thereafter. Franklin, how ugly am I?
I'm just wondering, when's your next fight in Vegas? I'll go out there. I'll be part of your crew that walks up to the ring. That's all I want to know. I can do that.
My cut man. I trust you to be my cut man. Are you
in? Unless you want to have look like all of a sudden razor marks everywhere, like it was a bad shaving mark. You sure you want me to do that? I don't know.
Yeah, I got faith in you, Franklin.
Yeah. I'm gonna say, cut me, Chris, cut me.
Oh gosh, yeah, all those things when we bet. Yeah, listen, I have a hard time. I have to go to the bar. I have bad time shaving, so I don't know if you want me to do that. I mean, if you want to, like, you have like folds everywhere, go ahead for it. Otherwise, nah.
Good enough. Here's what I need from you first. You need to give us the definitive number, because we're all speculating as to what Jalen Hurts will be playing at on Saturday. We saw what he played at last week. No one truly affixed the number to it. He's now got 13 more days of rest to get better and be ready. I know we still have 5 days before the game, but give us your best case scenario, best guess scenario. If Jalen Hurts at his tippy top this year was 100%, pick whichever game you think he was the best in as he was playing on an MVP type level. If that's 100, where's Jalen going to be at Saturday for the Giants?
All right, I'm using this based off of what I've heard from people, what I've seen from himself in these last couple weeks, and then just overall looking back. I'd probably say we'd see about like a 75 to 80. I don't think you're going to see a 100% one, because that, I think by now, originally I was told like it's a grade 1. If it's still bothering him, the fact that they're worried about his shoulder and limited him last week with that one day, even though he threw the following one, I think he's going to be somewhere around 75, 80%. And the biggest test for me is going to be how well that shoulder holds up when they run, because they're going to run him again. because that's where their offense is really truly successful. And after looking at the way that he took a couple of those hits against the Giants, the first in his last start, I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, you know what, he'll probably be about 80, get some runs in, and you just gotta hope that it's not too bad. He doesn't suffer another hit like he did in Chicago.
If he's only 75 or 80, like you said, sorry, John, does that open the door for a lesser talented team like the Giants to come into Philadelphia and beat the Eagles?
I would have thought so, but looking at the way, and this is it's more of an intangible thing as well too. I still think the Eagles have a better roster top to bottom. I think the Eagles still have a better roster. Giants come in with a little momentum, but when you look at the way, I think yesterday was their Super Bowl. I truly believe it, because nobody really doubted them. It was granted, it was the Vikings. I think a lot of people picked the Vikings. I picked the Giants to win that game, but yeah, look at this. I think that was such an emotional high for them. They're coming here on a road against a team that is very familiar with them. So yeah, even with 80% Jalen Hurts, I think the Eagles will still win this game. I think it'll be at least.
Yeah, that's good. It's a good point, Chris, because you have to go on the road. You start with an emotional win, then you got to go back on the road, and even though it's close, it's not a difficult road trip, but it's a road trip nonetheless. It's tough to get up emotionally for 2 consecutive weeks. That's why it's so difficult for teams that have to go on the road in the playoffs. But with Jalen, I think you're right. He's not going to be 100%. We know that. We know he's going to fight through pain. To me, it's not about that. It's about, do the Eagles try to protect him? If the Eagles try to protect him, I think there might be some issues. If they say, you know what, this is the playoffs, we got nothing to save you for, zone reads back in the equation, then I don't think they have a problem. Do you think they're in week 18 mode where they take the zone read mechanics out of the offense, or they say, nope, this is the postseason, we got the whole playbook?
I think if the first 15 plays, I think they'll try to protect it within the opening script with those first 15 plays where they say, you know what, we'll roll them out instead of using zone read, and it'll use a little bit more elements. But if that doesn't start to work, then all bets are off, because the last thing you want to do is give the Giants any hope going into this game, thinking they can hang around more and more. Although we've seen so many comebacks, including the Jaguars this last week, this is a game where you want to get up early and assert yourself, say, hey, you know what, that last game, week 18, wasn't this Eagles team you think you're going to get, even though you play your backups, and that's what a lot of people I've read about are hanging themselves on. That's going to be outcome of the game. It's going to be like that. But I think you'll see the opening script's going to be more about protecting them at first, getting a good read of what that Giants defense is doing, and then if they see like it's a little sluggish or they're not hitting on all cylinders, say, you know what, Jalen, just do your thing, get us out of here, and then let's go to the NFC Championship game if that's the case.
Both you and Ed Kracz went down similar roads in the question we asked about how the offense is going to look out of the gate, saying, well, maybe not right away that they go back to the Eagles offense that we saw that got them out to the undefeated start. But at some point, here it comes. Wouldn't you want to get that underway like as soon as possible? That means if you win the coin flip, you actually say, come on, give me the ball. Let me get the ball first. Let me play my rope-a-dope against you with Jalen Hurts, and then we start our true offense, and then we run you off the field. Please tell me there's a chance that Nick Sirianni will say, I'll take the ball rather than defer on the opening kickoff.
Nah, they're defer. This team, I will say this team, it seems
Come
like
Damn it! It's never gonna happen, is it?
No, because as weird as it sounds, defensively, I know I was talking about offense. Defensively, it seems like this team is a little bit better in the second half. And when this team makes the adjustments they have to the second half, and I can see them coming out where it's like, you know what? Yeah, if it's too close to that one, they'll come out and do a reset. So I don't think this team is going to take the ball on the first one. It'll definitely be a surprise if they do, because they're not using that. But no, I don't think they're going to go right away from that. And we've seen this in the past when the Eagles have been sluggish. Look at the Colts game. Look at some of these other games when the Eagles have been sluggish, throwing the ball, can't move the ball downfield. All of a sudden, Jalen takes over with his legs, and then they move the offense down that way too. So I think that's the way they're going to go.
I think the Eagles, last year in the playoffs, that was a legitimate criticism. Like last year, they were a different team. They weren't equipped to play with Tampa Bay. You should try to shorten the game. This season, this team is rightfully haughty. They think they're the best team in football. They should think they're the best team in football. They played like it, at least when the starting quarterback is out there. They're not afraid of anybody. You take the football when you want to shorten the game, when you're playing Kansas City, when you're playing Buffalo. The Eagles aren't afraid of anybody. And why should they be afraid of anybody? I'm shocked the fans are afraid of the New York Giants. I say it all the time. I'm sure you've heard, Chris. I don't know if you have heard, but if you haven't, it's tough to beat a team 3 times, Chris Franklin. I don't know if you've heard that. I don't get it. I don't get it.
I tried to take myself off of Twitter this week. I'm like, I got a weekend off. Let me try to stay away. But then all of a sudden, that didn't happen. I was like, let me check this out. And then after that game, when they got the Giants lost, I was, oh my goodness, no team ever beat the win, and nobody can do this 3 times. No. It's one of those things you just have. I look at it as one of those things like, if you're confident in your team, if you're confident in your roster, you're confident in your scheme, there's nothing really to worry about until probably maybe the Super Bowl. I really think when you look at the 49ers are the only team I think, when you look at everything they have, they're the only team that I really think they can match up well, only because of the scheme they have offensively. I think the Eagles defense, the offense can match up well against their the 49ers defense. So unless the 49ers are one of the AFC teams that are out there, if they win those games and get that far to the Super Bowl, there's no real team that really think it poses a threat to the Eagles right now. And it's all about a confidence thing. I know it's Philadelphia, history of Philadelphia. Trust me, growing up in this area all the time. Well, everything's lined up perfectly. Oh wait, the Buccaneers in 2-2. Oh, everything's lined up perfectly. Oh wait, the Carolina Panthers.
9 Buccaneers. Yeah, I can't waste my time worrying about the Buccaneers or the Giants we'll see how it shakes out. But yeah, I'm kind of surprised that people look at this team and the way they performed and are worried about playing the Giants a 3rd time. I mean, I said, and Jody will tell you, this is my preferred matchup. And it was kind of opposite because Seattle's, the same. Basically, they're the same. They're, borderline playoff teams from a talent level. And the Eagles should, beat either of those teams like a drum. But I thought the familiarity helped a little bit. That's why I thought Seattle would be a tad tougher. I guess everybody else goes in the other direction.
Well, also look at the recent history with this team against. Granted, I know Russell Wilson's not there, but look at just the overall recent history against Seattle. They have a really good. You don't know if you'd have Devontae Maddox back right this week if you did.
Yeah,
play
they
him,
have
so
more weapons too. That was the other reason. Yeah,
so that's why I think this worked out way better for the Eagles when it came to Giants. And it's just also, I just look at that team. Do you think Daniel Jones can win in the playoffs against this team? And it all comes down to quarterback. You think I'd rather take a 80% Jalen Hurts over a fully healthy Daniel Jones any day of the week. Personally, I think even if he's playing with a lot of confidence, I just look at that.
And he's playing well, Daniel Jones. You got to give him credit. He's playing well now against a very bad defense. That might be the worst defense in the NFL. Very good offense in Minnesota, but very bad defense.
See how key are Eagle linebackers in this upcoming game? Because once again, Daniel Jones showed his ability to run the football. He's not afraid to pull it down. They're not afraid to call direct running plays for him. And his ability to make plays with his legs was a big part of the Giant win yesterday, which means for me, the linebackers are key. They're going to have to be able to both come up, stop the run for Saquon Barkley, but also do a little coverage and have knowledge as to where Daniel Jones is and finish with tackles. You got faith in the Eagle linebacking core that they can slow down Daniel Jones, who's become a big part of the Giants' offensive weapons.
Yeah, and I think it's the main thing you have to do as well. So you have to mix the coverage. Basically the one thing I'm really going to be watching as well too is when they go into that dime, when they have Kaiser White back as the lone linebacker, are they going to use him as a spy on Daniel Jones? And then how do you mix up that look as well too? Do you throw maybe throw a corner at a nickel guy or one of your defensive safeties on them, like to do that as well too? Like you throw Reed Blanchard, you throw K'Von Wallace, dare I say that? But yeah, you throw him to the spot. One of those guys. You got to mix up I'm worried about when there's a lot of space because when you look at the Giants receiving core, I mean, Darius Slayton, to me personally, I feel that Darius Slayton would be the one guy I'm really looking at. Like, but he doesn't interfere. But when you have James Bradbury and Darius Slay, it doesn't really invoke fear. So their wide receiving core is nothing to write home about. There's nothing that's potent, like say, like we talked about with Seattle Seahawks. But it's enough space to spread that defense out and leave those draw lanes and those zone reads roll around. So that's the area I'm looking at for. And I think Kaiser White, if he's in that dime look, that's where I think he can handle his own. But it's going to be it's going to be a game where you cannot miss tackles at all. And that's where the key thing I'm looking at right now. You can't miss tackles.
Yeah, I'm worried about the tackling thing versus San Francisco because they have Debo and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk. You better tackle those guys because that 7-yard Brock Purdy pass turns into 70 real quick with Debo Samuel. But don't want to get a step ahead. I do want to give credit for Isaiah Hodgins because he's been really impressive since they plucked him off the Buffalo practice squad. But, Darius Slay and James Bradbury, as you mentioned, that's a lot different than a 72-year-old Patrick Pederson and Duke Shelley. So I think the Eagles are better equipped to shut down the Giants passing game. And then I think it's kind of takes care of itself. If you have no threat throwing the football, then you can really, really focus on Daniel Jones and the zone read stuff.
Yeah, and then I think this team, when you look at that, when they're in their base defense, I think they've shown, at least in the first game, I look at it as an outlier now against the Giants, but you just show them like they can, basically, I'll start to say, just to restart this way. I think they can handle Saquon Barkley overall with just that when they go to that 5-man front, and they can stop it that way too. The only other thing I'm worried about is when it comes to the play action, if they get that rolling, they start going with the play action, and they start sucking those safeties up a little bit, and then they get somebody behind them, maybe. That's the only thing I'd probably work. But I think they can handle. It's all about just stopping Daniel Jones in his legs, I think, right now. I think they can handle Saquon Barkley when they take that team approach or defensively.
How often do you think they're going to be in the 5-man front? And I know that's a tough question to answer at this time of the week. We got all week to figure it out, but that's going to be a key decision. Does Gannon push those right buttons on Saturday against the Giants?
If I'm doing that, I'm starting every first. I know it'd be predictable, but I'm starting every first down with it. I think when you start to see teams get a little bit more, start really going run game when they switch back to the 4-man front on first down. I think the 5-inch one, when you have Linval Joseph playing, I know he looked a little hobbled the last couple of weeks, like slowed down a little bit, and saw one time limping on the sideline, whatever. I don't know if that is affecting him. Is anything that's effective long term? But you start looking at them overall. I like that 5-man front especially against this Giants team, because I think it forces them to bring in another tight end a little bit, or if they want to try to break and try to spread them out, good luck trying to do that. But I think that's the key thing. I've started every first down and just say, okay, we're putting our 5 best defensive linemen out there, beat us and try to wear us down. And I think they play sound gap thing, they can stop Saquon Barkley, period.
Yeah, people that watch this show know my thought on that. I mean, that's what makes the Eagles different than the Chargers or the Vikings or the 70 other teams that run this stupid scheme, which I don't like. But they can bury the fronts very effectively. And when they stop you and turn 1st and 10 into 2nd and long, 3rd and long, known pass, as Jonathan Gannon likes to say, then you let the dogs loose, and that's where you get 70 sacks, and that's kind of what's happened throughout the season. I think that Linval Joseph pickup, and people hate when I say it, even Jordan Davis, before the injury, people forget before the injury, he was starting to come on. You need that player in this defense. You need that player. The Chargers don't have it. They had it a little bit with Linval. The Vikings don't have it. The Eagles have it. And it's a big thing, even though it doesn't show up on the stat sheet.
Yeah, and that's a crazy thing. You look at Ndamukong Suh. I mean, we've barely talked about him in the last couple. He's got his impact. Basically, he's playing more of a role play. Like, hey, I'm going to try to take up 2 offensive linemen and let's set up these other edge rushers. Playing that role, but he's doing it effective enough. And when you look at that, and you get the pressure, you can't run up the middle, and you're forcing teams to go out on the edge in the pursuit. I'll take that any day because I think as long as you play contain, you can do it the right way. And so, yeah, the 5-man, I would definitely use it early and often. And I think they can have some success with it against this Giants Giants offensive line, especially on the side of Evan Neal. Like I think they could, even if they wanted to pass rush, the Giants decide they want to pass out of that.
Yeah,
I
the
think they could have a lot.
Giants, Chris, they're going to be a problem in like 2 years. But when Kayvon Thibodeau starts to get his feet underneath him and Evan Neal, those are really, really talented guys. But they're going through those. Jim Schwartz used to call them startup costs, those rookie startup costs. When they start to get it, they're gonna be a problem, the Giants, in a couple of years. But luckily, Saturday's Saturday, not a couple of years.
All right, CF. I think a key in this game, and it may be something that we don't even get a chance to deal with, is going to be whether Avonte Maddox plays or not. The Eagles are 1-2 in their last 3 games, and their one win was not awe-inspiring over the Giants, and Avonte Maddox didn't play in any of those 3 games. I think his importance to this defense is being undersold, and Gardner Johnson did a nice job dropping down and filling in for him better than Josiah Scott did, but I want Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back at safety, where he might be able to come up with a big pick that could turn the game on Saturday. Are the Eagles going to play it close to the vest? Are you going to have no clue as to whether Maddox can play? Do you think they'll come out and tell you earlier in the week there's no Avonte Maddox? What are the chances he actually plays for the Eagles on Saturday?
That's been one of the tougher ones for me to try to get a straight answer on. I can't, like, he saw without the move, then you see him. I'm not sure if he's going to play. I have no clue on that one. I'm trying to get somebody to tell me that. But you start to see, I think, in that Cowboys game early on, you saw what he brings to this defense. I mean, not only did you see him as a blitzer, not only you see him as a good run stuffer, he's obviously a good cover guy on the inside, and you don't have to, shade a safety over toward his side or start to rotate the coverage over to try to shore up that spot when you got a good receiver moving into the slot. So, I mean, if they get him back, it's very, very key. I don't know if I had to get this completely all speculation. This is nothing that I want to. I'd probably say it's 40%. I wouldn't count on it, but on this team, you ever when it comes to injuries, all of a sudden like, he's put a 21-day window open and he's running around now again. Oh, great, something like that. But yeah, we see how important it is. I think Chauncey Gardner. I think for now, at least against this Giants team, I think they can hold you over. You're going to need them against the 49ers.
Yes.
You're going to need them against them because we just have too many guys to go that way too. Even if it's the Cowboys, I doubt they're going to beat them on the Cowboys or the Bucs. Who I doubt they're going to go out there and beat before whoever wins tonight. But yeah.
Ultimately, I do think it's going to be Eagles 49ers, and it's going to be very important to have Avonte back for that game. So I think that would be more of my focus, and it's a concern. It would be a big concern in that game because all of a sudden, I think you're right. If you have Chauncey playing that hybrid role, he can play safety and base and then go down in the slot, have Reed Blankenship come in. You're fine against the Giants. Against the 49ers, I don't know. I don't know about that. That could be an issue. But that's in the future. I did want to talk about Doug a little bit. Doug Pederson, third largest comeback in NFL postseason history. Another feather in his cap. In a lot of ways, I want to workshop this with you, Chris. I think it's the coaching version of the Stephon Diggs trade. They didn't trade, obviously, but from the perspective of, it's very rarely when these things work out. And the Bills got Diggs, who's tremendous, and the Vikings got Jefferson, who's tremendous. The Eagles got Nick Sirianni, who's tremendous, and the Jags got Doug Pederson, who is tremendous. There's always acrimony in any divorce. You heard some of those whispers, Doug can't do this, Doug can't do that. Doug's pretty good, isn't he?
He's all right. I mean, I remember my first season covering this beat was that 2020 year, and he looked like he was just frustrated as the year. He like it really took his toll, and I think
the COVID year, he's not because he's a people guy. I think Zoom and MS Teams killed him. I think that killed him really, the pandemic year.
And when you look at the way that you got to give him credit for what he did with Jacksonville. I think the Eagles needed somebody who was just like him in a way that I'm not using the word because I know he uses a lot when they're connected. I'm not using that word, but he's somebody who's a player's coach in a way. Somebody but it can still be a disciplinarian at the time as well, to not let them basically run the lunatics run the asylum. So I look at the guy. I think it worked out perfectly for the Eagles when they got Sirianni. But I think whoever went to take that Jacksonville job was going to look a lot better than Urban Meyer because that was just
that's
horrible.
baked in. Yeah.
But to have a good experienced coach to rally those young guys around, they need some direction because you basically lost a year for a lot of those young players there, and you need somebody who can not only basically relate to them in a way, being a player, but somebody who can show them, hey, this is how you win the thing. And I think when you look at what Doug did, Doug, to me, Dable and Doug are tied for Coach of the Year, but I look at the accomplishment. Doug won the division, and Dable's a wild card team. Granted, you can see Eagles in that league, but Doug won the division. So to me, Doug is the Coach of the Year. I think when everything is said and done.
But you're right. It's fair to say the phrase was never more fitting. There was only one direction to go, but up from Jacksonville last year. So Doug did have that going for him, but he's done a phenomenal job. I need a prediction out of you, Chris Franklin. Will it be you or one of your Eagle fellow beat reporters who asks Nick Sirianni this week, what level is Jalen Hurts at in his superhuman healing? Because he's gone there a couple of times, and and then he was in so much pain. Jalen said it, and the coach said it. But we've been told he was basically superhero level healing. Did that kick in? Will that kick in this week? Because I think it decides the game on Saturday.
I think. Oh, I still laugh at that when it was funny, but I'm
not like the rest of us humans. Okay, Coach.
From the planet Krypton, Jalen Hurts came by and was adopted by the Hurts net. But I'm looking at somebody's going to ask it. That's the phone ringing now. Somebody's going to ask it, so it's not going to be me.
Maybe that's Coach. He's going to tell you, yeah, go ahead, answer that question. You asked that question. Tell you about super healing powers.
That's not the famous phone, is it, Chris? Nick made your phone famous.
No, it's not this. I got this one right here. It's not that one at all. No, it's not that. Oh, that was fun. But no, I'm looking at somebody's going to ask it. I have an idea. It might be one of the Philadelphia papers that asked that. It might be the same. Well, not that reporter who asked that's not usually on the Zooms, but somebody's asking that. It ain't going to be me though, because like, all right,
maybe off the record. Maybe off the record, but
yeah, off the record. Yeah, but I doubt it.
maybe in a nicer way. All right, my at C Franklin News. First off, follow Chris on Twitter. Read him at nj.com, South Jersey Times, Lehigh Valley Live, Times of Trenton. He's all over the place. So wherever you are, you can read Chris Franklin, and he does a tremendous job. Biggest fear coming up on Saturday night. I'm going to give you 3 potential. I'll throw 4. Daniel Jones having a similar game as against the Vikings, throwing the ball, dual threat, Jalen Hurts to put it. Saquon Barkley, ultimate talent. Dexter Lawrence dominates in the middle of that line defensively, or the fact you're going to have to be up all Saturday night. At least it's Saturday night.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, I'm losing Saturday night. That's for sure. That's the thing. I'm losing Saturday night. Like I'm going to have much fun. This is going out. No, that's the main thing.
I'm going to be up all night.
Usually if it's 2 or 3 in the morning, I'm having a very good time, and I'm not usually representing the press box. No offense being with you guys, but yeah. But no, I'm looking at if that Saturday night's number 1. But I think when you go to the Giants players themselves, I think it's more the Daniel Jones thing. That's the only thing they got. I think they handle Barkley. I think the Kelsey will give them all the right protections. I think the guards will handle themselves very well. But it's definitely Daniel Jones taking off. But yeah, I'm missing my Saturday night. It can't be like the Cowboys and have a keg of beer in there. That'd be great.
I got news for both you guys. Yeah. Suck it up. Do you see this thing? I'm here today, okay? Every single Saturday night, I'm on the air till 2 o'clock in the morning. So both of you guys suck it up and get your job done like the Eagles should on Saturday night. Chris, great stuff. As always, my friend, go see who called. Check the answering machine. Hopefully it is Nick, and text Johnny Mac if it wasn't. Said, oh, shoot, he was listening. He told me I better not ask that question McDonald asked you to ask. We appreciate you coming on board. Chris, always a pleasure. We'll talk to you again next week, big guy.
Thanks, guys. Y'all have a good one now.
That's Chris Franklin here with us on Birds 365. All right, Johnny Mac, Jody Mac coming back. You know what we're going to do? We're going to put a bow on the show. Stay here.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Valle Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
Since 1977, it's always been about you, the community, at Rafferty Subaru. And through the Subaru Love Promise, we prove we care by supporting charities like So Good Now.
So Good Now helps kids in under-resourced areas by connecting them with student athletes to serve as mentors. We remove barriers so athletes can help youth in the corners of our communities where light and love are needed most.
When you choose Rafferty Subaru, you help organizations like So Good Now.
It's all about you at Rafferty Subaru.
Go for the beers, go for the cheers, go for the hit and the hits, go for the scene, go for the screens, go for the gallery, go for the win, go to Ocean.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Post-game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post-game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
Coming down the home stretch, a playoff week, Birds 365. We know it's Eagles-Giants on Saturday night. Much to John McMullen's chagrin, he's going to lose his Saturday night. I lose every Saturday night. Ancillary story, Johnny Mac, that you hope has no effect on this week whatsoever, and I'm pretty confident that it doesn't. Eagles and their coaching staff, that coordinators being given a chance to interview for head coaching jobs, other positional coaches being given a job to interview for coordinator positions with other teams. We know Jonathan Gannon's line of "You are where your feet are," and hopefully that's the case, and he's focused, and all the Eagle coaches are focused this week at the most important task at hand. That's beating the Giants. On a 0 to 10 scale of concern that the Eagle coaching staff could be distracted this week, where's your number at?
0.5. It's just business as usual in the NFL. It's the way it works. Now, the concern, if they start losing guys, really ramps up in the offseason. But that's for the offseason, because I think, coaching attrition, we've lived through it here in Philadelphia in the past. You see what happens. Andy, you can go all the way back to Andy Reid, his first coaching staff, but also Doug with Frank Reich and John DiFilippo right after the Super Bowl. All of a sudden that attrition starts, and it's difficult to replace those guys. And by the way, it's not only Jonathan Gannon, Shane Steichen, Kevin Patullo. Jets are interested. Now, I think they're going to go after Darrell Bevell, but, nonetheless, Brian Johnson's been rumored to sort of be hooked up with a number of potential offensive coordinator openings, Steve Wilkes in Carolina being one of them, and Denard Wilson in Cleveland. So, the Barbarians are at the gate, I wrote, when it comes to the Eagles coaching staff. And that's how this league works. When you have success, and it's only going to get worse if they finish this thing, for the patient teams at least, it's only going to get worse.
Right. And my thought has always been, listen, it's part of the price of doing business. If you're going to be good, you're going to make a Super Bowl run, you could potentially have a parade. Yeah, there's a price to pay. Your coaching staff is going to get rated. But I always have concerns about guys who've never done it before. Now, Gannon did last year, so I have less concern about him, but this is Steichen's first time of having to split his attention. The underlings, we talked about the positional coaches who have coordinator potential meetings. You never know. Even if you tell yourself that you're not going to be distracted, you don't know until you're in that moment. And for a bunch of these guys, it's the first time they've ever faced that. So I think it's something worth keeping an eye on. Hopefully it has no effect on Saturday's game against the Giants coming up for the Birds. All right, partner, your buddy, your partner, Rocky Raccoon, is going to be back here tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to look any better. My wife actually offered to lend me some makeup if I wanted to go there. And I said, no, I'm wearing my tough guy.
Yeah, you got a tough guy. Yeah, you got to be the tough. You got to fight through. It's the playoffs. I agree with your decision there, Jody.
Didn't go to the makeup route. I will not have it on tomorrow either. But I will be back here, as will you, right, Party? You be here with me. And
I will do short week. Tuesday is Wednesday. Wednesday's Thursday. Thursday is Friday. So Eagles moving everything up. Short week. Let's get it going.
That's right.
Eagles Giants week number 3. Ooh, can't beat a team three times. I heard that
three times in 1 week. Oh, except you can. And we'll continue to hammer that all week. McMullen and McDonald will be back right here on Birds 365 in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.